Welcome everyone. My name is Mahar Al Asfar. I'm a senior technical marketing architect focused on Aria automation at VMware. And today we'll learn how to consume and deploy VMware Cloud Foundation components, aka vSphere. Any vSphere, specifically, we're targeting here feature and capabilities that are specific for VCF or VMware Cloud Foundation components such as NSXT, vSAN, and SDDC manager integrations, etc. How to consume and deploy VMware Cloud Foundation components. So we're going to take a look at the NSXT integration, as I mentioned, through network profiles and the use of templates. These are the VMware Aria automation templates. And then I'm going to give you a look at the existing VCF SDDC manager integration and the VCF cloud accounts, which is a feature today that is strictly on-prem. It'll be interesting to see if this feature will ultimately also be available for the SaaS form factor of Aria automation. It's not really an integration, but from vSAN perspective, we're going to take a look at the storage profiles and see how we can expose all the vSAN storage policies and how we can use that to target specific storage features, I would say, or characteristics in terms of the storage you want to land on and the storage policy, whether it's for encryption or to support a specific RAID type. And then if time permits, at the end, we'll take a look at a couple of exclusive day 2 actions for VCF-based workload virtual machines. Just like the past session, just a quick overview of what VMware Aria Automation is. It's an infrastructure automation platform that delivers a secure self-service multi-cloud environment with governance and resource lifecycle management. And this is across VMware Cloud and native public cloud environments. The idea here is that it benefits organizations and enables them to enables faster time to market, enables governance and resource lifecycle management, as well as accelerated innovation and enables governance and control. It's built for self-service multi-cloud, and we have different modules that supports the VMware Aria automation solutions, such as assembler, service broker, pipelines, which is our CI/CD solution, and the built-in embedded orchestrator and Aria automation config for configuration management. All right, so starting with the big one here is the NSXT, whether you're on a 3.x or 4.x. When it comes to Aria automation, we can easily create cloud accounts for NSXT. And this really allows us to do automated deployment and configuration of NSX objects. So if we talk about NSX and what it provides today in terms of constructs, we see that it provides and supports segments, which is the networks that it can create, and gateways, distributed security policies, and security tags. And then combine that with Aria automation, where we have access to the self-service catalog, the resource reservations, and the cloud zones, and builds that cloud management platform and be able to create multi-machine blueprints where we can consume and set it up with security policies and network profiles. The result is you're able to create this end-to-end on-demand application delivery across cloud. So basically you can create dedicated networks for your database workloads. You can create dedicated networks for your applications, application workloads, and dedicated networks for your internet-facing or web servers, all with tagging, all with boundaries, all with all of east-west firewall rules, etc., which we're going to take a look at some of the sample templates or blueprints, for another word. in terms of how we do that today. So one of the important features is that we can create VMware Cloud templates for provisioning provider infrastructure and using infrastructure as code. And this is being able to provision NSX network objects as standalone objects. So we can provision networks and load balancers with NSX. So they are reusable and consumable network objects, and be able to provision object that can also be added to existing or net new network profiles for consumption in templates and project level. So we can see on the right hand of the screen, right side of the screen is that we have a template where we drag and drop a load balancer and attach it to a network. And this load balancer now is Aria automation provision. So it's an object that I can use in either the network profiles or within the refer to it into when I'm creating, for example, load balancer, and I don't want to create new ones, and I want to create use existing load balancer that I provisioned via this provider infrastructure code within the template. So that's one use case. One of the different things in assembler, and I guess it looks here, it says it's referring to the old name. Apologies for that, but it's assembler network options for NSX is defined using network types, and we're going to take a look at that live when we dive into the product. And the network assembler here defined as network types as public to kind of associate with any networks that you as a network admin or a cloud admin have labeled and flagged as this is like an internet facing maybe. Private, if you're looking for isolation. Outbound, all about netting, and we'll talk about that. And existing is existing segment in NSXT or existing networks like distributed port groups using distributed virtual switching. And routed, which is my favorite here, which is ability to be able to route traffic and create T1s, which is the edge gateway connected to tier 0 within your infrastructure or within your NSXT infrastructure. And then existing networks also could be used as you can use the discovered networks, or you can previously deployed networks that you basically provisioned via the provider infrastructure as code that we mentioned in the previous slide. So these are the 5 types of networks that we can kind of refer to depending on the use case that we're after. If we're creating workloads where NATing is needed, or creating workloads where routing is needed, or creating workloads where isolation is needed. To give you in terms of the deployment and what is referred to in assembler and how does it do it on the NSXT side in terms of comparing when you select routed. So we'll start with the top here, what it says private. If you do select a network private, what it does, it actually creates a segment, enables DHCP on that segment. And as you can see, this segment is not connected to a tier 1 or anything for that matter. The only communication available here is going to be the workloads on the private network will have communication among themselves. And there's also a really a good way of creating like a jump server if you add another network with connectivity on one of the VMs. So one of the VMs will be the VM that it's going to use, or you're going to use as a jump box to access these workloads on those networks. The second type is outbound. There's 4 things that we do when we actually use the network type outbound. One, we create a segment, obviously, the network. We enable DHCP server on that network if you would like to use it. And this is everything happen on that front is on the NSX T side. And then we do shared T1. So we create a tier 1 and we connect the tier 1 to the tier 0 within the infrastructure, and we enable one-to-many netting. So those are the 4 things that corresponds to the outbound type network. One thing here I want to Point two is that within the outbound, what we do is we advertise all the NAT routes on the T1. So all the workloads behind the tier one can actually communicate out if you want to. And then the last one is routed. Again, we create a segment. We create a DHCP server available if you want to use a DHCP server. Obviously, you can use static IPs, if you will. And then again, it's a shared tier one. So there's a dedicated tier one for the routed network. And here, instead of advertising all the NSX connected routes, instead of advertising all the NAT routes, we advertise all the connected routes. And therefore, these machines were able to connect to the outside network accordingly. And also enables routing back into those VMs on those networks via the tier one that they're connected to. If we give you like just a user view of how networking serves the application, I know this is a little bit of a busy screen, but Aria Automation offers a lot of different capabilities when it comes to one, security and services. So we can create security groups. These security groups can be existing security groups created by your security officers, if you operate that way, or it could be on demand, created when the application is created and deleted when the application is deleted. Firewall rules, on-demand firewall rules. Enough from the sprawl of firewall rules, and then you're scared of deleting a firewall rule that may bring an infrastructure down. These firewall rules will exist after the deployment of the application and gets deleted when the deployment in VRA or Aria Automation is deleted. And then load balancers can also be, like I mentioned momentarily, that you can use an existing load balancers, or you can use on-demand load balancers where they get created when the deployment is created and they get deleted when the deployment is deleted. And that's on the security and services side. So firewall rules, security groups, and load balancer. And the load balancer obviously will have rules that will dictate what application or traffic passes through that load balancer and what doesn't. Networking. So we've talked about all the different type of NSX segments that we create when we create routed networks or outbound networks. So the segments is just another word for network, and we can use existing NSX segments created by our network administrators with NSXT, or we can create them on demand when the deployment is created and delete them when the deployment is deleted. And connectivity here for on-demand supports the routed. So we create T1, we create the segment, we attach the segment to the T1, and we advertise the routed traffic. And the source netting, which is T1 doing the outbound netting for us. And then the private, there's the segment just is not connected to anything. And this is the communication is only between the workloads on that specific segment. We also have port access translation, and that's inbound NAT port based. And you're able to actually create netting rules that allows you to interact or to do inbound NAT or destination NAT, that is, behind the T1, if you would, to access certain workloads behind the T1, if you need to. And then the last thing is day two actions. We can do day two actions on two NSXT type objects. One of them is being able to reconfigure the load balancer rules, the size of the load balancer, the log levels. All these can be done through day two operations, and also the security group reconfiguration and the firewall rules. And I'm going to show that in a demo shortly. One of the biggest thing in terms of where you use the NSX constructs is within the network profile. And the network profile centralizes the configuration required for creating on-demand provider networks, all facilitated within the network policy tab. So anytime when you open the network profile under infrastructure, configure network profiles, you'll see networks tab. This is for existing networks that you want to create the profile for. Basically, what we're doing with the network profile, is that we're creating the network capability or the network we want to target as a destination for the workload we're provisioning. So the networks will be for existing networks, whether it's vSphere or NSXT based. Network policy is where the on-demand factor comes in, and this is where we can go in and say, "Hey, I want to create an on-demand network. I want to create. Here is the transport zone." And this is, of course, discovered based on the NSXT Cloud account integration that you established or assume you established already. And then the tier 0 we're connected to and the edge cluster we're using. And then when it comes to the IP address management, to be able to configure, you're able to configure internal IPAM, like using VRA or Aria automation as the IPAM by specifying the CIDR, the subnet size, and the IP range assignment if you're using static IP assignment or DHCP IP assignment. Obviously, here we can choose an external IPAM, and today we support Infoblocks. So if you have Infoblocks in your organization and it's integrated, you can very easily download the Infoblocks package or plugin, upload it to Aria automation, and automatically be able to use Infoblock for IP leasing and DNS registration. And obviously, there we have support for also external third-party support, but there will be more um, um, uh, custom, if you will, effort into setting up those third-party support. But today, Infoblocks does not require any customization or any time effort. You upload the plugin and you basically use the external to actually point to your Infoblocks grid infrastructure and be able to lease IPs and register DNS records. The other good thing here is that we can use, there's multiple different tagging, and I want to kind of differentiate between vSphere tags or VMNIC tags or tags created specifically for NSX segments, etc. So usually tags within the VMware Cloud template is used for constraint. And we use capability tags. We assign capability tags on destination, on objects, so we can refer to them or point to them or set them or configure them as destination. To control, deployment targets. For example, this is the cluster I want to provision the VM to, and this is the network I want to attach, and this is the storage that I want, the VM to be on, whether it's tier 1, tier 2, etc. We use capability tags across all the components, and for sure you've seen us talk about capability tags when we're talking about cloud zones or Kubernetes zones or storage profiles or network profiles, which I'll dive into in a bit. The tagging is really using for organizations. So the first tag on the top of the slide here is that under the component resource, we have the tagging property under the properties of the cloud machine, and these tags represents vSphere tags. It's a key value pair. So the key is the value, and the key is here DB, and the value for that key is MySQL. So the tags is really an array, so you can do a list of tags under the property tags. So that's vSphere tags. By the way, I mean, these tags also work on public cloud if you're provisioning an AC2 instance or an Azure instance or a GCP instance. But today, our focus is VMware Cloud. The other thing is under the networks property, and this is where we can specify tag also in a key value pair. These tags will be created on the NIC side, on the VM NIC itself, and it's going to have a corresponding tag in NSX. On the NSX network itself, we can create tags that we can use to logically group virtual machines or the workloads we're provisioning, and maybe based on those tags, they will be automatically made members of certain security tag. As of recently, the vSphere tag actually translate to an NSXT security tag. So any vSphere tags that you create on the component, it gets translated, and also a security tag gets created on the NSXT side. And then the last one here is that we have VRA constraint capability tags. So you can see one on the network where it says constraint net :OD. And this is basically targeting two different networks. So that means there's two networks. So this machine is going to be on the outbound type network, and on the another network here. Yeah, so there's one network here, and then the other tag is basically under the cloud machine. So this is basically telling it to go to a specific cloud zone. So this is when how do you tag creation is supported through the templates and also can be used on the project level. And if you do want to create additional tags that we don't support out of the box, for example, on certain objects, you can always create them through orchestrator workflows or action-based extensibility. I think this is my last slide before I go into the demo. I'm just going to put the agenda here handy so it can keep us on track. And I'm going to switch into my template, NSXT template. So I go to Design, Templates, and I open, and this will be hopefully not too small, but what I'll do is, here's the kind of, if I maximize this and blow this up a little bit, here we have a front end, a group of machines. This is a count, meaning it can consist of one or more machines. We have a backend SQL database. And this is what we will be focusing on for this session. I mean, there's a third one here, but this is just a load generator that throws traffic on the web, just to emulate generating traffic against and hitting the web server. So the front end, because there's multiple machines and we could have multiple web servers, we have a load balancer. Also, this load balancer is connected to a gateway. This gateway is not is optional. The reason for this gateway, if that the fact that it's here connected to both the load balancer and the network, is that we just want to give it a specific name. If I leave it or don't have it in my template, Aria automation is going to generate a random name, and it will be really hard to find that gateway that it's using. So this is just a way for us to give it a name, so it reflects, what is it used for, and you can very easily see it in the NSXT inventory. We also have security groups, one attached to the front end and another security group attached to the MySQL. So now that we kind of discovered, so the architecture, last thing here I say is that the front end is connected to a dedicated web network. This is an on-demand segment. And then the database is selected also on a different network. These two machines are not on the same network. Therefore, they're going to have different segments connected to, and these segments will have their own routing, as we will see momentarily. So I'm going to minimize this and focus on the code here a little bit. And also, we'll dip this down and have this like this. And let's increase the font a little bit. Okay, so let's check the load balancer. The load balancer here is dragged and dropped from the elements library. So if we scroll down to the NSX, you'll see you have a gateway, you have a load balancer, you have a NAT, and you have a network, which is an NSX network. These are different from the vSphere network or the agnostic network that we have under the cloud agnostic section. The reason I'm saying that these are different networks, because if we actually go and check this network and highlight the code here, you'll see it has the routed. The routed is a network time functionality that is only available today on an NSXT segment. So if we open another template and select an agnostic network or a vSphere network, we will not see the routed option. Okay, so on this network, you can see that I've given it a name. So this is for web. OC is the open card application. So just a short name for open card, and then the network type. And we can see our network types here available to us as we saw on the slide. I can choose between existing, outbound, private, public, or routed. And because I want the routed NSXT, the constraint here is going to point to the NSX profile or the network profile where the network policy within the network profile is configured. and we'll actually go in and show you the MOAD NSX Web is the constraint, which is the capability tag that we can see on the network profile. So if we switch to network profile under infrastructure configure, I can very easily see here my MOAD NSX tag, and this is my VCF MOAD NSXT web. And if we click on here, you'll see the capability tags that I'm referencing in the blueprint or the template. Notice here that the networks, because I'm targeting on demand specifically here, I'm provisioning networks that do not exist today. There's nothing here in the network listed under networks because these are for existing networks. What I want, where the configuration all kind of defined is within the network policy. And this is where we set the isolation policy to on-demand network. Again, here, this is all discovered in terms of what transport zone, what tier 0 depends on the NSXT manager you're connected to or you're integrating with. So if you have multiple tier 0, they'll all show up here, and you can pick which tier 0 you want to create the characteristics for this network profile we're using. So we're creating a network, an on-demand network for web traffic, and this is exactly what I need. Here we're using internal for simplicity. We give it a CIDR. The CIDR is /24, and we're gonna supernet the CIDR with /29. That means when we actually provision the network, we're gonna create a subnet with 6 IP addresses. So this is gonna allow us to create as a maximum 6 workloads on that network. Obviously, if you need more, you can change the supernetting to something like /28 if you want to support 14 IP addresses, or even go all the way to 65,534 IP addresses with /16. And then you're going to kind of, as the cloud admin, you kind of dictate if you're going to, for those IPs, for those 6 IPs, for example, are you going to use static, or are you going to use DHCP, or is it going to be both? If you were go with both, what VRA or Aria automation will do is going to split the 6 IP addresses into 2 different sections: 3 for static IP assignment and 3 for DHCP IP assignment. Here we configured that we're doing IP range assignment for the workloads that's going to be attached to this segment. The other one is the same thing for the DB. And if we go to the DB, we see the networks is not populated here because we're not really using this network profile for existing networks. And we have the NSX DB capability tag that we're referencing in the template. And under network policy, I'm simply using another subnet. So this is 224. And the other one, I believe it was 150. So there are 2 different subnets, basically. So let's get back to the template. So now that we kind of figured out the network type and that we're creating a routed, and if you remember the slide, when the network type is routed, we create a segment, we create a tier 1, we connect the tier 1 to the tier 0 in that environment based on the configuration of the network profile, and then we enable routed traffic, and therefore any VMs on that segment will be able to communicate in and out. All right, so let's go and check the load balancer now. The load balancer is also an NSX load balancer object dragged and dropped from the template. And this is where we're giving it a name. We can specify the type. So a type being small, which is compact, medium, large, or quad large, or extra large. So these are in terms of what small, medium, large, and extra large, and what do they mean in the NSXT kind of size, load balancer size on the NSXT side. In addition to that, you can, and if you're familiar with Aria automation, any of those properties can be converted to an input, or we can pass that via an input. So if I want the user to select the size of the load balancer, I can create an input, and then I can pass the value of the selection drop-down menu in terms of what the user is going to set this property to, whether small, medium, large, or extra large. more importantly, what rules the load balancer is going to create for us. So here we're creating the route property is an array. Anytime it's an array, that means I can create multiple entries under that. So you can see I have one rule, and that's on enabling HTTP on port 80. I am choosing the algorithm for the load balancer as round robin. We support round robin, weighted round robin, least connection, weighted least connection, and IP hash, URI, URL, or HTTP header. These are all load balancer algorithm that you can actually configure depending on what your use case needs. Okay, so that would be the load balancer. Let's move on to the security group. This security group specifically is attached to the front end. And in here, we can choose the security group type. So we can choose between new or existing. Those are the two options. Existing meaning our security officer already created one. And let me change that. And so it's already existed. So all we have to do is just basically refer to it. The usability is a little bit different, but this is going to create, when we say new, we're creating an on-demand security group. And these rules, again, rules is an array. That means I can list multiple rules. The order of these rules also is important because the rule on the top will be on the top, and then the least one, the one at the bottom, will be after. So if you have like a block all policy that you want to enforce in the security group, your blocking policy should be at the bottom. If none of them, if these rules, so the rules on the top will be enabled, and then everything else will be disabled. So it's going to go from top to bottom. So again, the first rule is we're doing HTTP. We are selecting the direction. It's inbound or it can be outbound. The protocol we're allowing, who's the source? And this is where the cloud admin can be very flexible into defining in terms of, hey, am I allowing everybody or so any? So in terms of the source, IP address, IP set, a CIDR, like a whole segment or a subnet, or we're referencing another security group. So you can actually configure exactly who you're allowing as the source to this and what's the direction of the traffic. And also, am I allowing access or am I denying the access? So access allows the network traffic, which is the default if you don't specify it. Deny blocks the network traffic. And drop, I think, is another option here. You can do drop, which will reject the traffic specified in this firewall rule. So you have three options: allow, deny, and drop. And the other rule here we're doing is SSH on port 22. Again, inbound using TCP protocol from any source and allow access. So these will be created when the deployment is requested and then deleted when the deployment is deleted. The last object here for NSX is the gateway. And I said really the gateway is optional. You don't really need it. All it needs to connect to is basically what this is saying for us here in this diagram is that the load balancer and the network will use the same tier one. And the tier one will be called OC Web Gateway, right? And this is, if I don't specify this, NSXT, when Aria automation deploys this, is going to just spin a random name, a GUID, that it doesn't really tell you or reflect exactly what this gateway is for. So all I'm saying here, we're giving it a meaningful name, so we know that this gateway is for the web traffic, and therefore there's a load balancer connected to it, which that means any rules created on the load balancer will be configured on the tier one, which is the gateway we're connected to, which is called OC-web-gateway. Same thing with the database. On the database here, we don't want a random name. So therefore, I'm giving it a name and I'm saying this segment, when it's created and the tier one you're going to create, call it OCDB gateway. Just a little bit pro tips here and there to organize your workloads as you provision them. It'll make the life of the network admin or whoever accesses NSXT a lot easier. Now that we kind of discovered and looked at the NSXT, let's go ahead and take a look at a deployment. So this is a deployment that we've done using that ARIA template. So it's called VCF with NSXT. You can see we have 2 web servers. We have the load generator, and we have the database backend. And then we have a gateway, and that's the call. This is how you identify this gateway directly in NSXT. And then the database gateway, and gateway here, just another word for tier 1 on the NSXT side. And then the load balancer, the database network, the web network, and then the 2 security group, the one created for the Apache front end and the back end MySQL. If we actually go in and look at the load balancer, here's the IP. And if we go and hit the website, you can see our website is up and running and working. So the rules are allowing HTTP on port 80 to access the application. Or I can go to the individual web servers here, which is really not the way to do it, but I can still load the application on those 2 servers that I provisioned. So if we target the second one, same thing. Okay. What I really wanted to show you here is the day 2 actions that you can actually take on the load balancer and the security group. So if we go to the load balancer, and this is day 2 actions, you've already provisioned this, you've already allowed the traffic for HTTP, but maybe you want something more. Maybe you want to allow more rules. So what do? If the admin have given you the reconfigure day 2 actions through the day 2 action policies, because these are gated, you can actually allow them to be requested and approved by someone. So one is that can they see the day 2 actions from a governance perspective? 2, who is there anybody or a group of people who needs to approve this reconfiguration of the load balancer? So all these things, as a cloud admin, you have the ability to go out and actually set these things. So we're going to go in and reconfigure. You can see this is the initial day 0 rule that got created when the deployment got created. But for whatever reason, I want to see I need a bigger load balancer, so I can change the type from small, which was what the original blueprint or template has configured. So the load balancer here can host different virtual servers and pool members based on the size. If I'm getting into some troubleshooting and I want to increase the logging level, I can choose between all the different supported logging levels on the load balancer. But most importantly, this is where I can go in and create a new load balancer route for maybe newer traffic. Maybe I want to enable SSH and port 22 from a load balancer perspective. I want to also balance those. So when I'm SSH into the load balancer, I can be connected to one of the 2 web servers that I have. Or you can go in and delete the existing rule and you want to block HTTP for whatever reason. If you hit the edit on the details, you'll see the details of the rule. You can change the algorithm of the load balancer here. So as you can see, there's a lot of different flexibility for the end user to be able to go in, update the rule, delete it, add new ones, change the enable or disable the health check if they're testing in an application, etc. On the security side as well, we have also a reconfigure day 2 actions, again, that can be gated for approvals, or even whether the user should see that day 2 actions or not. But here, when we actually select the security group, we're selecting the Apache one. We can see the existing rules that we have available to us that we configured. As you can see here, I am allowing inbound any protocol on port 80 and port 22. And if I need to reconfigure this, I can go in and hit reconfigure. I can add new rules if I wanted to. You can also select from either a predefined service or predefined servers, meaning let's say SSH, RDB, HTTP, or any predefined service on the NSXT side that your cloud admin or network admin have created for a specific use case. Or you can go by the protocol and if you know the protocol and the port you're operating on, you can select between TCP, UDP, ICMP, and being able to use the port numbers. If you have many ports at the same time using the same protocol, you can comma separate the individual ports and the or the port ranges you have in mind. Again, if you want to look at the actual rule or edit it, you can select the rules, hit edit, and modify the rule that was generated on day 0 and change it based on your needs and requirements. So that would be it for the NSXT. If we just switch back to the, I'm going to, this would conclude the NSXT integration in terms of the network profiles and the templates. I want to jump before I don't want to run out of time, but for the vSAN integration within the storage profile, it's really not an integration, but what the integration represents is that we bubble up the storage policies and make them available for you to be able to go in and create a storage profile from a specific account that represents the workload domain in VCF, and be able to expose all the different vSAN and other management storage policy, including the default, for example, vSAN storage policy that gets created. You can see here, we see vSAN default storage policy. So that means I'm creating a storage policy or storage profile that I may end up using in my template. So it represents the storage destination of the workload that I'm provisioning. So that destination is going to adhere based on the characteristics of the workload. It's going to adhere to the storage policy that I've defined on the vCenter side, including the vSAN storage policy that comes when you disable, that gets created when you actually create or establish or configure vSAN on your cluster. Especially with VCF, vSAN is one of the main components of VCF. Just like NSXT, we have the vSAN enabled between the host within the workload domain and the management domain as well. So once you, so this is exactly what I just wanted to show, that you can create, depending on the use case you want, the storage policy for the vSAN in terms whether you want to use ESA, RAID 5 or 6, or create your own and be able to use them here and be able to give them a capability tag that you can reference in the template to decide the storage backend for the workload that you're provisioning. Awesome. Now that we got that out of the way, I want to really ends with the VCF SDDC manager, because it doesn't seem to be known for a lot of customers who uses VCF today. But this is to the idea of the VCF integration is to easy the onboarding, or makes the onboarding a lot easier in terms of creation of VCF cloud account. And the way it works is that here I have an on-prem instance of Aria automation. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you live, for example, how to connect to an SDDC manager and what the experience looks like. So we'll log in as the built-in user. And I think I got booted out. So let's see here. I'm going to log into my SDDC. Okay. So this is my SDDC manager. I'm going to copy the FQDN from the URL. And as you can see, this SDDC manager has a management domain and a workload domain. And obviously, each domain has its own vCenter. So let's go ahead and see if we have a greenfield environment where we go to assembler. We go to infrastructure. And we go to connections and then cloud accounts. One thing that you don't see in Aria Automation SaaS is the VMware Cloud Foundation cloud tab. But before you actually use that, we have to go to integration, and we have to go say add integration and then select SDDC manager. And what we're going to do here is going to do TMM SDDC manager, and we're going to put the, you see, I've done this before. Let's use this. All this is do is that lets Aria automation know that, hey, I know now how to make API calls to the SDDC manager. Once this is added, now you're ready to create a cloud account for any of the vCenters or NSXT managers on the SDDC manager side. So let's go ahead and check that out. So if we go and say add cloud, instead of now going through the vCenter and trying to remember what the FQDN of the vCenter or the NSXT manager, I can simply go to the Cloud Foundation, and we're going to give it a, just call it VCF cloud account. And here now we can see our SDDC manager in the list, and we can pick it up based on the integration we did. Automatically, it exposes the workload domain. Actually, this is not the workload domain. One of them is management domain, and one of them is the workload domain. So let's say I want to interact with the cluster workload domain. Now I can scroll down and say either use Cloud Foundation managed service credentials. This is basically to automatically create service credentials and configure this cloud account with the default settings. Or, as you can see here, the vCenter managing the workload domain, the FQDN is automatically populated. You still have to provide the credentials or the service account that has access to this vCenter. So I'm going to do it here. And we got validated. And on the NSX user side, and I hope I remember what the password for this is. Let's see if the demo gods loves us today. They do. And the NSX mode policy, you can select between the manager, which is deprecated. You don't want to use that anymore. And then you're using the policy API. And now I want to allow the provisioning to these data center. I want to allow provisioning for the workload domain data center, and I want to create an automatic cloud zone for that. And I'm going to press add. And this automatically creates two accounts for me, an NSXT account and a VCF account. So, or actually both accounts are already configured within here automatically. Now, one extra, once the collection data is configured, and this is great for green customers who just bought, let's say, Aria automation and they own VCF, is that they can actually use the setup a cloud workflow. So if we click the setup account, setup cloud workflow, you'll see that this workflow is really to simplify and get you up and running really quickly to help you set up your on-prem SDDC to enable provisioning with Aria automation and be able to also populate the self-service catalog and be able to deploy your templates. So it takes about 10 minutes. You're new to VRA. You have VRA on-prem or Aria automation on-prem. And this is what I want the data center I want to allow provisioning to. Next step would be to select the data center we've already did. Do you want to create and deploy your first template, or you want to select from an existing template? So we're going to go and select. And let's say I want to do an Ubuntu 18. Next step would be to provide, for example, if I'm creating a new project or using an existing one. So obviously, if you're greenfield and you're just using it for the first time, this is going to be a new project. So we're going to do Aria. Who is the administrators? You can list them here. So right now, we're just going to use the built-in account. And the members, which is the administrator, I'm going to do next. Now, it takes you through the governance policies and allows you to create policies for your projects, things like approval, leasing, machine name. You can edit each of those and basically create them on the fly. Yes, I require an approval. Who's the approver? It takes you through all the aspects of things that you would have to do manually, and allows you to create that. For now, I'm going to skip the approval, lease, and machine just for the time. And then once you're ready, this is like an overview summary of all the things that we're going to apply, and then we're going to run this quick start. So it goes out and actually deploys this for us. And this is done. So if we actually switch over and look at the things, we can see that if we go to the projects, we go to assembler, and we go to our project, we'll see that we have an Aria project now. We'll see that the user has been added here. We have our administrator, especially if your Aria automation is already connected to AD, you can pick your users and groups. If we go to provision, we'll see the cloud zone has been added and created and has a capability tag. And we're all set and run here. If we go into flavor mapping, this is something that we have not set, but you still have to set your t-shirt sizing and images here. And if we go to image mapping, we see that we've selected the the MOAD Ubuntu. And again, now we're ready to go in and actually go in and create templates and starts provisioning workloads. All right, so that is for the VCF SDDC Manager. Hopefully, you got the idea in terms of the workload and the easy of onboarding that we make available with the VCF SDDC Manager integration and the VCF types of cloud account types. Again, this is only on on-prem. And for the day two actions, I think we have like 6 minutes left. For the day two action specifically for VCF or VMware in particular, I want to highlight two main day two actions that's only available on vSphere. So one thing is we'll switch to our original environment, and we can go in and actually select our VCF with NSXT, the same one that we did the thing on it. And what I want to show is that if we select, for example, the workload, like the front end workload here, there are two actions that I want to point out that is only available and supported on vSphere or VCF workloads. The first one being is that obviously you can see a lot of different day two actions here. You have the ability to create your own custom day two actions using ABX or orchestrator workflows and have them displayed here and gated, meaning you can create the day two action policy to actually let the user see them in the menu, and then go above and beyond that and have wrap an approval policy around those actions. But again, we want to do the rebuild. So this rebuild will actually rebuild the resource specifically from the, and it will wipe the VM, and it will wipe its desks here and deattach any first class disks if first class disk being used, which is not the case here. And it will rebuild this VM for us as a day two actions. This is only available within or against a vSphere based workload. The second one I want to point out is the unregister. If for whatever reason you decided to unregister the VM from Aria automation management for whatever reason, and if you want to continue managing the disk in Aria automation, we can unregister this VM. So one, it will not be managed by Aria automation anymore. Two, it's going to free licenses if you're on, I don't know, like an OS licensing format. So those two unregister will unregister machine. If you go to a cloud, a native cloud application like a VM like EC2, you will not be able to do those type of day two actions like rebuild or unregister the workload. Those are the two things I just wanted to, this is in addition to, again, all the day two actions that we support today. All right, we're on time. And this would be the end of this session. Make sure to join us for the next session on everything VMware Aria with Vincent Riccio about the plugin-based elements in Aria automation cloud templates. The plugin-based elements uses the IDEM open source project to allow a wider support for deploying workloads and public cloud objects like S3, for example, and a lot more on different public cloud like GCP, AWS, and very soon Azure in the November release. That will be on November 9th, 2023. With that, I want to thank everybody for joining and for those watching the recordings. And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much.